All right, so welcome back to episode 3 of our Healthy Relationships podcast. I'm joined with two of my favorite people on staff. Probably not allowed to say that, but I love you guys.
Probably said it on the last podcast, too.
I say it all the time.
Yep.
I said it to every one of our guests.
He's going to say it on the next one, too.
Mm-hmm.
But we got Kenny Green, our Central Campus pastor, and Jesse Sampson, our Buda Campus pastor. And I'm so excited for today. So today's going to be a little bit different for anybody listening. We're probably going to shoot a little more from the hip because between three of us, we can go off in different channels. But we find a way back. But today we're talking about healthy family dynamics.
Be careful with Jesse's hips.
Yeah,
Just a little
they're
bit
a
more
little
careful
brittle.
with his.
They're a little
Well, they
brittle.
don't lie.
Okay.
That's true. Okay. I thought that was me. Okay. No, Shakira, Hispanic. It was
Yes.
low-hanging fruit.
100%.
That's good. That's good.
But today we're talking about healthy family dynamics, and we just celebrated Mother's Day. So if you didn't get a chance to watch, anybody who's listening to this, if you didn't get a chance to watch our panel that we did with some amazing moms and motherly figures, go back to gatewaychurch.com/messages and watch some of those. It's going to be a great resource. But today we're talking with two dads, 3 if you're including myself. And between us, we got more kids than a Chuck E. Cheese birthday party.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot to learn, I think. There's a lot that we don't know as well.
Hashtag fruitful.
That's right. There's multiply.
And multiply.
Just being
That's
obedient.
All
That's
of it. That's it. That's all of it. So in the spirit of fathers and dads and families, I'd love to know, we hear a lot like, hey, the way that we view God is shaped by our earthly fathers. And so for some of us, that can carry some baggage. For some of us, we have really beautiful experiences. And for those of us who are dads and hear that, it puts the onus on us of like, man, there's more weight on the way that I raise my kids, knowing that I'm a reflection. So 2-part question. What was, I guess, your experience with your dad growing up that maybe shaped the way that you view God? And how has it changed the way that you... So Kenny, I want to start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think earlier on in life, I think there's probably a little bit more of a shadow side to that, where my dad, always super loving, hardworking, demonstrated a lot of great, just a lot of great qualities. But at the same time, I know my dad had his issues with addiction in his life, a lot of stuff around that I think made my dad unavailable to some degree. Unavailable. He was always there, always present. My dad, came home from work at the end of the day, and I always sort of had my dad physically there. But I think on an emotional level sometimes, and on that sort of talking about the deeper things level, probably a little less available. It was harder for him. I just know that was a hard space for him. And so I think one of the things that shaped earlier in life was it almost had a little bit of a framework around God for me, where probably God was similar, cared about the big stuff. God was there for me, when the chips were down and the big stuff, he was there. But like when it came to like matters of the heart, things I just needed to talk about, maybe he didn't have time for all of that. And so it probably affected things like prayer and stuff like that to some degree. But just that father image thing, it's powerful.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about that through the years. On the other hand, in my adult life, I've really been able to reflect back and look at just the generosity piece with my dad. Like my dad was one of the most generous human beings I've ever known. We never had much, but like everything we had was for the taking, for anybody who needed it. And my dad, we would sometimes like go out to the garage or go out in the yard, and there'd be like just something that we had yesterday, it would just be missing. Yeah. Like, where'd that go? So-and-so needed that thing or whatever. Oh, they borrowed it? No, I just gave it to him. Like, that was my dad. My dad was quick to give away money, quick to give away stuff. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was really teaching me a lot about generosity and what it looks like to hold things in life as if they belong to God, not to us. And that was actually pretty cool. And
getting to instill that in your family today, I'm sure, is a big piece of generosity. It's probably value you guys.
Yeah, for sure. That's carried forward for sure. Awesome. Yeah.
Jesse, what about you? What was your view of your dad or your relationship with your dad? How did that affect your view of God, and how's it translated into your family today?
Yeah. So for years, we kind of believe narratives about our childhood, and it just kind of gets retold in our minds and our hearts. And the narrative for many years, which is true, that my dad did abandon me, left my mom when I was 2. And, he came back in through a small window when I was a teenager. But, I held on to that for many years, that my dad abandoned me. And that's how I viewed God. kind of bringing it forward over the past couple of years, just doing a little bit of work around, healing. I think we continue to heal, especially around father wounds. We all have them. I think that's a given. But I was reminded of a little bit of the narrative that I had like either tucked away or refused to pay attention to. And it was in those teenage years that my dad told me to be a man of character, which is ironic because he wasn't to me. And I think what it's brought to light is you don't know what you don't know. And, the reality is my dad had a terrible father. And he probably had a terrible father. And the fact that generational patterns get passed down is a reality. And so I hold less against my dad these days than I have in the past. And I think that's been healing. So I can bring that forward to my family. And what I tell my kids often is, without a doubt, there's going to be something that you're going to blame me for.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm going to screw your life up. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
And what I want you to know is, that being said, remember the good things about what you did learn while you were with me as a father. And so I think it's been one of the things that, again, it's been a recent thing, but it's been very healing.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me and my journey, it was a little bit like that too. Kind of similar to what you were saying, Kenny. Like I had a dad. I knew he loved me. He hugged me all the time. He kissed me. He said, "I love you." He provided.
Yeah.
But I can count on one hand, like how many times he came to a game of mine in high school, right? And I played 3 sports. And so I think it took a while to get there, but there was this view of God of like, God, I know you love me, but I'm not sure you like me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure you have time for me. Like, are you interested in the things that I'm in? And coming to that realization for me, I think it helped in my parenting, like just getting down to my kids' level and doing the things that they like to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's weird, you know what I mean? But like playing with toys that I'm like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
But it's really the only thing I should have. So I think that helps.
Yeah, I think that comes out too. Like even when we talk about prayer together with our kids, like one of the things, I had parents who prayed for us for sure. My mom especially was a praying mom, and man, I'm probably alive and walking around today in great part. Of course, it's the goodness of God, but it was a praying mom who was praying me through years of addiction and all kinds of stuff. But so she was praying for us and with us and all of that. But I think there's something about like spending time each day with our kids, really praying the details of our lives and like modeling that. And now as they have gotten a little bit older, encouraging them to do the same. Like, what do you want to talk to God about today?
Yeah.
And like showing them like these moments with God where this may seem trivial to you. Like it's a little thing, but it's not to God. Like if it's big to you, it's big to your Heavenly Father. And I think having them praying in some of the things like praying around baseball and sports or praying around just the desires of our hearts sometimes for like, maybe something new in our life or a friendship or something, those things are really important to God. We know that now, but I think it's really cool that one of the generational, I think, blessings that I'm passing along to my boys is ever since they can probably remember praying together, we've been praying around the little things. We've been having the detailed conversations with God. And I think that's a lot different. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. That's so good. I think that to just kind of take that down a trail, you already told everybody, we're going to rabbit trail this thing.
Yeah.
So
it's all right.
I think there's something, the way me and Chrissy engage our family and our kids, our older kids especially, is that we want them to have their own faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Kenny's talking about, just having them pray and pray for things, they're able to model their own faith.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely don't want my kids to have my faith or Chrissy's faith. And so we don't even make our kids go to church. I usually come by the room and say, "Hey, you going today?" And they're like, "Of course I'm going today." Well, I'm not assuming you're going to go. It's your decision. If you want to come serve, if you want to do any of that, because I don't want them to grow up and think that, oh, well, my dad was a pastor, so of course we went to church. Yeah. I want them to want that for their own life, especially as they get older.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love the conversations that we get to have. I don't want to say as pastors, because it should be natural conversations as followers of Jesus that we have with our kids. Like I think some of my best messages actually start off as conversations with me and my oldest daughter.
Yeah.
Where she has some deep theological questions where I'm like, man, if you're asking these things at 8, like imagine the questions that people are having at 32.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 41, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. That's so
and
good.
Able to, digest it and comprehend it at 8 years old. She's like, oh, I can get around that. I can believe that about God. Like we
Yeah.
had a conversation about like what happens after life and hell and heaven and like my 8-year-old, I'm like trying to massage it so like she doesn't get scared, and then she's like, no, I get that. That makes sense, Dad. And so it helps to have conversations in other directions as well. So how is being a dad, I guess that can segue into this, how's being a dad helped you better relate to other people, right? Like you're both pastors, pillars in your communities, in the people that you minister to on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. How has being a father better helped you in other areas?
Hold on one second. I was just distracted by when he talked about pillars in the community. I don't know why, but what I was picturing was like pillars falling, like crumbling, like down, like that.
Simple. Like,
It was weird. I got distracted by it. Maybe you're the pillar in the community. I was picturing
yours is fracturing.
These things just falling. Yeah, like it was a
probably
different scene.
I mean, maybe a 2x4 in the corner.
2x4.
That's right. Full up.
Yeah,
that's right.
You're a bundle of sticks.
That's right. Sorry, man.
It's okay.
Let's bring this back. So,
I think that. Being a father, how it's helped me engage the community. Is that the question? Is that where we're...
No, how's being a father helped you in other areas and other relationships in your life?
Yeah, I think the in Galatians 6:4, Paul says, take the children by the hand and lead them the way of the master. I think that is something that's helped me frame things, even for people that we lead. And they're not my children, but it's just helped me have the view of always be pointing to Jesus, especially our children, bring them to Christ. Certainly I'm no expert. I know, can you say the same? No expert. I think we're regular people that are chasing after Jesus. Yeah. And so I think that some of the misconception is like, oh, we know more. Not really. Right. Actually, we probably know very little, but we do have a heart to chase after him. And I think that being a father's heart is very unique, that it instructs, it guides, it corrects, it encourages.
Yeah.
It's not unlike our Father's heart. It's not unlike the characteristics of God: merciful, compassionate, forgiving, even just. Fathers they have a justice piece about them that they bring. And so I think it helps you as a dad and a father help shepherd people in a way, not just our kids, but also the people.
Yeah, it reminds me of what Paul says, right? He says, you have a lot of teachers, but you don't have a lot of fathers.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right?
It's a great point because, it's like, so my boys now, I have 4 of them, and 3 of them are a little bit older now. I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Then we have an 18-month-old. So in theory, he's going to get the best of us, right? Like I'm excited for him. We're doing so much better with him already.
He's going to get the surgically repaired hip.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. But with my older boys, it's like one of the things I think that's been so cool. You talk about the father's heart, Jesse, and the father's heart also is very protective. Even territorial, maybe sometimes that can be healthy and not sometimes. But I know that when you bring up like teaching, and there's a lot of that, there's a lot of teachers, I have a huge value for teaching and for coaching. And I think those things are super valuable. But I also know that as my boys have gotten a little older, what I've found is I'm seeing better results sometimes as more of almost a facilitator in their conflicts and in the conversations they have, or when they're at odds with each other. Like mediation is a high value that I carry as a father right now, and it's just as protective as the teacher who wants to teach them something, or as the coach who wants to kind of grow them in some way. But that mediator, from a place of wanting to see them grow and wanting to see them thrive, it actually wants to let them talk things out more. I can give them the answer, not all the time, but a lot of the time, or I can kind of just guide them along and let them find it in conflict with each other, let them kind of get to a resolve together or to some kind of reconciliation together. I think the value in that is that they end up seeing the best in each other. They still fight all the time, and they're all, they're at each other constantly.
But they're the ones helping to resolve it.
Big time. And they're learning these things that while they're growing respect for one another in weird ways, they're growing sort of an admiration for each other and the different gifts that they have and stuff like that. they're also learning, I think, how to do that better, just to resolve conflict, to sit in something and not run from it, or have to just, have that need to like punch somebody in the face, but to like sit in something and go, okay, like we can talk this out. And I think that's really valuable because, like you said, it's not so much about being a pastor as it is just a follower of Jesus who loves living in spiritual community with people. I find myself wanting to shepherd that more with people. I can always offer teaching, I can always offer coaching, some of it good, some of it maybe not so good. But when I can sit with a couple people who are having an issue of some sort or conflict in their marriage or their family, or they have like parenting conversations that they want to have, it's cool when we can just mediate really great conversations for people, guide them along a little bit, but like let them get there.
Discovered, yeah.
Yeah, the discovery piece is super important, man. So
yeah.
You mentioned some maybe not so healthy habits, and you guys have kids of all ages, so you get it. Sometimes you're a boxing promoter and trying to keep them from fighting each other. But there's, you mentioned fighting or running away, and those are some unhealthy habits that just happen naturally from just being a human being, but also some things that we carry. So here's where I want to lean into is, what are some unhealthy patterns and behaviors that you had maybe before becoming a parent, and then as you became a parent that morphed into certain ways? And how did that look like? How did you get help in that area? How did you get better in that area? So I'll give you one of mine to kick off this portion. Is just like, I noticed that anytime my kids would get messy, I would freak out. Like, I was okay with them jumping off of heights and like maybe breaking a bone if that happened. That's part of being a kid. But like if they track mud in or get Play-Doh everywhere.
Blood good.
Yeah.
Mud, not so much.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Totally.
Cereal bowl spilling, knocking over drinks. Like my cortisol levels would increase, and I would just, the mess that they would create, it would rise up in me. And I remember one day God was just like, Ricky, why are you, he's doing it right now. And the Holy Spirit was just like, it's pertaining to one of my kids, is like, why are you so afraid to, when she makes a mess? Because I'm never afraid of your mess. And it was that moment that actually spurred me on to kind of a recovery journey.
Yeah.
And realize, okay, what is it there? Is it that I feel like I can't take on other people's mess? So that's just one thing. There's a multitude of things. But what's something that, an unhealthy pattern you recognize, Jesse, as a parent, that you recognize, man, this isn't helpful for me as a dad, as a husband, or whatever in my family? And how did you go about really healing through that?
Yeah. Well, as my professionally done emotional healthy assessment shows, I struggle with interpersonal relationships. It was $500 well spent, by the way. But I already knew that. I knew that for years. Like I said, I viewed my dad as abandoning me, and that's I held on to that for many years. And so for me, relationships were not. It's nothing to drop somebody. I just
to
move
cut somebody
on.
off.
Yeah, I just move on because I didn't want to get too close. I didn't want to let people into the inner depths of my heart. And so it was really easy for me to just turn people loose. And when me and my wife got married, there was a real struggle for her because she would say, well, you have these friends. And I do. I have these friends that I don't talk to for sometimes 10, 15 years. And she said, it doesn't bother you? And I said, yeah, it really doesn't. But one of the things that I had to grow in, and recovery is one of the areas that I started to really look at this, is that one, not everyone's my enemy. And two, people do love me. And two, people do care. And people are not quick to run away from me as I perceive that to be. And so what I had to do with my family, for some of my older kids, two of my oldest teenage daughters, and our oldest teenage son, they have two dads in a sense. They saw an unhealthy dad, and then now they see a dad transform. With the younger kids, they kind of have one dad. So there's a real dichotomy in our house. But I brought into our family just the idea and just started to speak this all over them, is that people are not your enemy. People are not your enemy. So you need to engage conflict. If you have a conflict, engage it, press into it. Don't run from it. Even with whether it's a principal or a teacher, or it's with the family. And I'm not going to solve it for you. You need to do it. I'm going to give you some tools. This is what you need to do, but go do it and work on the relationships, whether it's interpersonal or not, just a coworker or whatever. Work on that relationship so that you don't just leave a trail behind you of broken relationships all over the place.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, I think for me, family of origin stuff probably, I see more of the kind of the shame spiral thing that, I come from a long and distinguished line of addiction in the men that I've grown up around and with. And so, my dad struggled with addiction, his dad the same, and his dad the same. And the thing that I've seen over the generations, even probably up to my teenage years, is I saw how the green men, like in our family, like for generations, they spiral in shame a lot. And when they do, they shut down, and they don't talk about it, right? You've messed up. You know that you've hurt somebody, like you've hurt your wife, you've hurt your family, you've let people down. And my family would mostly avoid any conversation around stuff like that with a vengeance, just absolute avoidance.
It was taboo.
And, yeah, there was a taboo to it, and I think what it was it would get covered up by things like humor, which has an upside. There's some fun stuff about that was modeled in our levity and things like that get modeled in our family, but ultimately there's a lot of avoidance, right? So there's just stuff that builds up over the years, because as you're dealing with shame and you're not actually dealing with it with anybody else, not interpersonally and not communally with others, you got this piling of shame, this mountain of shame that is growing in life. And then of course, that's a big part of my adult life for many, many years. It's just living in a constant shame spiral, and finding all kinds of very effective ways to run away from and not deal with that, through drugs, through partying of different sorts, through pornography, through all kinds of sexual brokenness and relational brokenness. Basically just, I don't want to feel this. I'm not going to deal with this. And so what does it take for me not to have to, right? But now as a dad, and because of recovery and because of getting to spend some really great time with just a great therapist, I'm a huge fan of a good therapist in our lives, and a good counselor, someone to talk to, and of course through recovery and through living, not just going through recovery, but living in recovery community with others on an ongoing basis. I think the value I bring to my family now, and to my wife and I's relationship, and to my relationship with my boys, is when we are experiencing shame, we're going to communicate. I think this is probably, by the way, I think this is brutal. I think this is something that's really difficult for my boys. I think right now there are times when they're like, I don't want to talk about it, right? I want to withdraw. I just want to go stew. And I totally get that. But I think there's a value in, we're going to talk about this right now. And we may not settle this, right? Like, we may not make this better, but it's going to be better than us not talking about it and letting it pile up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, my hope would be that when my boys are older and they're sitting, maybe having a conversation with you on a podcast, Ricky, that maybe one of them, if the worst thing they can say to you is that, man, my dad made us talk about everything. If that's the worst thing that comes from this, as opposed to, man, we never talked about anything in our house, I'll still count it as a small victory in terms of generational healing. I don't know if I've got this down yet, but I'm going to err on the side of, hey, let's talk about it. And let's make sure that shame isn't living in some weird, dark, shady place where our mind is writing a story. I love what you said. Like, our mind is writing like a narrative over time. It's a false narrative.
Yeah.
It's built on lies, and it comes from the enemy. We want to let Jesus speak into this. We want the Holy Spirit to be ministering to our family. And I think that happens best when we're having these conversations together.
That's great. That's beautiful. Thank you, man. Give me real quick. I would love, what's one family value that you guys have, like that your kids can repeat it without the moment you start, that you guys have, that you share, that is instilled into your family? Like, one thing that we do, I would say honesty is a big one in our family. Like, we're going to tell the truth. We're not going to lie. Like, even if it hurts, even if it's, if it's hard to say, we're going to be truthful. But I think there's also the healthy thing that comes from that too, is we're going to be truthful in who our kids are, right? So I've shared this with some of our people at our campus, but every morning before they go to school, like we have a list of affirmations that with our daughter, and it starts with who they are in God. It's truth. It's I'm loved by God. I'm loved by my mommy and papi. I am fearfully and wonderfully. I'm smart. I am a leader. I love others. I'm kind to others. So it helps them see who they are. It's instilling truth in who they are. So I'd say honesty, truth is a big one in our family. What's one family value kind of live by in how you your kids?
Snitches get stitches.
That's right. I was you
Hands
just took
thrown in
mine.
ditches.
There's a lot of bruises in the Sampson household.
Yeah, that's right. I think honesty is a huge one. I think it's just so important that our boys are growing up to know that, there's nothing you can do that's going to change the love that my wife Jenny and I have for you guys. There's nothing you can do to burn that. But there is this other thing called trust, and there's this thing about living with integrity together and living with character. We're all characters, but like also trying to build character in our family that I think is really valuable. We can let dishonesty take root in our family dynamic. And that can start with me, that can start with one of the boys. But when that starts to happen, everything starts to unravel. I love what you're saying, Ricky, because I think like there's a beauty in just affirmations. There's beauty in speaking the truth about each other. But I think that there's such a value in speaking truth to each other. The biggest thing that I want my kids to understand is there's nothing you could say. There's nothing that you could tell me today that, one, is going to make me blush, but two, that would ever change the way I feel about you, the love that I have for you. And again, at my best, and I'm scraping the surface maybe on some days, but at my best, I'm just imaging my Heavenly Father that way. I'm imaging their Heavenly Father. It's Romans 8, right? There's nothing that could separate us from the love of God that we find in this relationship with Christ Jesus. I want my boys to know that. I think the other value is just that our home is always open. And I think there's something that is one of the great things I learned in my family of origin. I think that's something that we carry forward. Jenny grew up in a home like that too, where their home was always open. Sometimes it was ministry consciously. Sometimes it was just, hey, the door is open. Like if you need a place to sit down, if you need a place to eat, if you need a place to come and laugh and hang out, if you just want to come over and spend time together, the door is open.
And so your kids get to see multitude of people, different backgrounds, different struggles, different personalities.
Yeah. And I think like when as pastors' kids, like I think one of the things that's cool is I think when our kids think about like the church, the church that mommy and daddy lead or the church that we're a part of, I really don't think they think much about buildings. I think they think mostly about our living room.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And I think they think mostly about what happens in our home over time. And I think like they think, oh yeah, that's where the church really was happening. In fact, that's really where the church began. And since then, we've had some really cool experiences, downtown and in different parts of Central Austin. We've had some cool places to meet and all that. But ultimately, I think there's something about the table, the living room, and what goes on in our home, and just the doors being open all the time that probably best represents what church is, at least the way my kids are learning it at a young age.
Totally.
Love that. Jesse, what's a value that you guys instill in your family, or that's just part of your family DNA, your family culture?
Yeah. Since Kenny took 2, I'll go ahead and take 2. I saw you work that extra one in. I think trust too is something it's big in our family culture. I tell my kids, I've told them from the time they could hear, really understand, is you don't earn my trust. I give it to you freely. There's certain things that over time maybe you could start to lose trust. I think that's a reality because there's always consequences to our actions. I don't want my kids thinking that, oh, you can just Pollyanna, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that is my kids are very forthcoming. They're very honest about things that they're coming up against. And it's because I've allowed that trust to be up front. I've set the account full of trust for them. And that's paid off huge in our family. The other value, and we went through our family values. Does every family do that? I feel like
it should be a part.
We did that.
Oh yeah, everybody's old enough.
We do that all the time. Totally.
Competitive was number one. My family's very competitive.
Yeah,
but I'm going to rule that one out. I think it's sometimes unhealthy. But I think honor came in for our family. We all agreed that just to be honoring to each other, honoring to people around us. I know some people set different with honor culture, and that's fine. But I think there's something beautiful when you can honor the beauty around you, honor the beauty in people, honor people that have gone before you.
Yeah,
wisdom,
100%.
and when you can frame your heart that way, I think that it'll help my kids move through life
That's
in
awesome.
a really cool way.
That's
So,
awesome. Hey, to help us wrap this up, what is one thing? So being a mom, being a dad, it's influence, right, in the next generation. And but what would you say to the person who says, "I'm not a mom, I'm not a dad, I don't have a family. How can I create a healthier family dynamic, either with my family of origin or my coworkers or the people that I'm influencing now, right? With what can I do with my influence? What's one thing you would say to create a healthy family atmosphere wherever you're at? What's one thing that somebody can moving out of here?
Well, the first thing I would say, I shared this on Sunday with, I think it's central in the Buda community. Anytime we're talking about kids and next generation, we're talking to everyone.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Whether you have kids or maybe the reality is you're struggling with infertility or you're thinking about adopting or any of that. But if there's kids in a community, it's everybody's responsibility to come around and support and guide and raise. And I think that if that was done, we would see a different culture and generation being raised up. The next thing is I think we struggle with this in general with being communal and being family because we're so not to bang the Western individualistic drum too hard, but it is a stretch for us to get to that frame of mind that's we're communal. Less probably for us at this table for sure, because I mean, for me, having a big family, it forces me into communal aspects right off the bat. We're a family of 11 at times, 9 all the time. And so communal aspect is always on my mind. But I think that we have to learn to push against that individualistic mindset and go, okay, well, my actions actually are
affect others.
They affect somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. My lack to follow Jesus actually affects somebody else.
Yeah.
That's good.
My decision to follow Jesus actually affects somebody else. And if we had that kingdom mindset that was that we are a body.
Yeah. So so you're saying seeing yourself as a part of a community, a vital part of a community would help change the way that you see the people around you. What's one thing, Kenny, that somebody can take away from here, whether they're in a family or have a family or not, that can help them in their influence or in the way that they relate to people?
Yeah, slow down. That's it, man, slow down. That would be the thing that I think is applicable to all of us, wherever we find ourselves, whatever season we're in. I think to build good relationships together, I think to build thriving dynamics, be it a workplace, be it a social kind of gathering, spiritual family, building something with a family of origin or whatever it might be, is slow down. I'm thinking of one of the proverbs from the Hebrew scriptures that would say, there is a way that seems right to a person, but it leads to death. Mm-hmm. That is actually how I feel about the pace that we live at. Yeah. It seems right because everybody's doing it. Yeah. And and that's true inside the church and outside of the church and workplaces and whatever. There's a pace that we are living at. Seems right, but it seems right because it's the pace that everything's moving at, But the reality is it leads to death in a lot of ways. And one of the biggest ones is it kills real relationships. It kills our ability to grow relationships together, to thrive together, because to listen, you got to slow down.
Yeah. And if not, our relationships just become, what can you do for me? How can I?
100%.
And it's 100%, just super fast-paced.
And I'm not going to really know you, Ricky. I'm not going to really get the honor of getting to know you and your family if there's never a time when I'm able to slow down and to listen and to hear your stories, to want to sit with you. And I'm telling you, that is so countercultural in every way right now. It's countercultural in our homes. It's countercultural outside of our homes. So that'd be my quick sort of like 2-word boil down would just be slow down. Yeah. Take the time to slow down because people are worth that.
That's good. Yeah. Slow down in community.
That's right. Love that.
Be honest with each other.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you guys so much for being on this episode. We appreciate you. Hopefully this was helpful to everybody that's listening. And if there's one thing I got out of this, is that every night the Green family door is open.
That's right.
So if somebody needs a place to stay, need some food tonight, you can go.
It's actually the gate to the backyard that's open. The doors are locked, but you can always come hang out in our backyard.
There's a dog. There's a dog.
There's a trampoline. There's a little dog back there. No, just
hey, thank you guys so much. Love y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Love you too, brother.